Three, two, one, go. John Carpenter film, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's correct. Wrote and directed it.
Yeah. So this wasn't the character of Snake wasn't based on like any sort of material prior to this, was he? Like this was straight out of Carpenter's mind.
Yeah, I think this is Snake Plissken's first appearance. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's the two films, and I think that's pretty much it. Uh, I think from memory, there may have been the occasional comic book limited series, and uh, Hideo Kojima, I think, sort of used Snake as an inspiration for developing Solid Snake in his Metal Gear Solid games. So it's quite a sort of distinctive, iconic look now with the eye patch and
Yeah.
the
The
long
eye
hair
patch,
and
yeah.
things like that. I like the approach to the movie, and what a cast. Look at some of these names: Lee Van Cleef, Ernest Borgnine, Donald Pleasence.
I think most of these have passed on, haven't they? With the exception of Kurt himself. I think the bulk of these people have moved on beyond life.
Yeah, some unexpectedly. I think Isaac Hayes died relatively young, which is, sad to hear. Ernest Borgnine had a long career, all quiet on the Western Front, and the original Poseidon, the Poseidon Adventure. Lee Van Cleef was in a few Clint Eastwood westerns,
Yeah.
like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Harry Dean Stanton.
What year was this one? I know the second one was 96. Was this in the 90s
Yeah,
or was this in the 80s?
no, very early, 1981. So quite a huge gap. I was a bit taken aback rewatching it a little while ago. Yeah, just how old it was.
Yeah.
And it was such a long gap between the first and second installment. I see a lot of parallels and echoes with these two films and the Terminator first two films, how the first one is just a lean and tight thriller, not a big budget, really economical, really focused, and with the second installment with a lot more money, a much bigger epic scope, and a more expansive story. Same actor, same writer, director. I see a lot of parallels with these two movies and the two good Terminators.
It's got to be one of the, what do they call them? A duology when there's only two of them?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
well, I know there's been quite a number of pushes to try and bring Snake back and do something with him, and I don't believe any role can't be recast or anything like that. But I think the idea of this character and what Carpenter and Russell set out to do, it really kind of needed to happen when it happened.
yeah. And this opening text really puts it in perspective, doesn't it? Like the then future of 1988.
Yeah, and I always like the sort of the DOS high maintenance sort of high contrasting colors on black screens in computers. I
Yeah,
know,
pretty high tech for the time.
yeah, I know, and what I was going to add to that was Escape from LA stays with that same look, even though
Yeah,
technology had come a long way since 81 to 96, it still stuck with that look to keep it uniform. I thought that was really good.
yeah, it's a terrific opening. Tremendous amount of world building going on.
The
It's
two
always been
towers.
a kind of, yeah, it's just so kind of sad watching it now. The New York just had that iconic skyline with the World Trade Center, and yeah,
Mm.
just so sad. And the voiceover, kind of a really eerie and human tone to it, just very coldly and calmly stating the facts and setting the rules for the story about to unfold. Um, I've often heard it said it's Jamie Lee Curtis doing that voiceover. It sounds a lot like her. I don't believe it's ever been confirmed it's her or not.
Yeah.
It sounds an awful lot like her, but
Oh, that's right, because Carpenter also did Halloween, didn't he?
yeah, that's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that makes sense. There's quite a number of original properties that have come out of his sort of creative brain, hasn't there? Like The Thing, the escape movies,
Yeah.
Halloween. Like, I mean, I'm not. I mean, the guy would be a fair age now. Like, what, he'd be closer to 90, if not there already.
Yeah, he's had a long career. Yeah, The Thing, I think, was a remake of a 50s either short story or film from memory, but yeah, it's now considered one of the best movies ever made
Well, now, but
with Kurt Russell.
having said that, when people say the thing, it's John Carpenter's The Thing that they're talking about. Like, there's
Yeah.
so in my mind, yeah, it's definitely one I chalk up for him. Um,
Yeah, well, I think the original probably was The Thing from Another World or something along those lines. This,
like that shot with the wall that around New York just before with the chopper flying over. I love those kind of old miniatures, matte paintings, little bit of CG here there, just to sort of blend it all together and all of that. Like the Neverending Story did a lot of cool things like that as well.
yeah,
And
that's a terrific shot.
like this and the
Yeah,
bridge, like it's just
yeah,
fantastic how it well composed all the different elements are to realize that in
yeah.
'81.
Illustrates your point perfectly. I read somewhere Jim Cameron did some matte paintings on this film. I'm not sure which one specifically, but yeah, it looked brilliant, that shot a second ago with the chopper flying across.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of cool moments like that in this. And well, that's the thing. Like, I know a lot of people aren't particularly fond of green screens and stuff like that, but the move from, matte paintings in backgrounds to illustrate depth of field and all of that to green screens is just kind of how filmmaking evolved over the decades. So you can have
Yeah,
two sets in two different locations on the planet, and you can attach them with green screens. Like, that wasn't doable back in the 80s and 90s. So there are
yeah.
some pluses and minuses to how it's done.
Yeah, it just punches so far above its weight, this movie.
Yeah.
It's
And I do quite like when we do get introduced to Pliskin. I do quite like the jeans and the muscle shirt. Um, I don't know if the chain smoking badass was done a lot in the 70s. Like I suppose you had your Charles Bronsons and things like that. Um, but it's been done a lot of times since Snake Plissken. Let's
yeah.
just say it that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's amazing how times have changed because I watch a fair few movies from other eras. Everyone smokes in these movies. It's yeah, it's really interesting comparing then to now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've never really fully appreciated Kurt Russell. I was thinking during the week, I don't think I've seen anything outright bad with him in it. And if it was bad, I don't recall him being bad in it. He's, yeah, just has been around for so long now, and he always seems to deliver high quality performances.
Hmm.
I haven't seen absolutely everything, but every film I've watched of his has been good to great. Like I try to think of a dud he'd been in, and I'm coming up empty. He was in, these movies, Tango and Cash, Executive Decision, Unlawful Entry. Breakdown is a really good movie from the late '90s. Yeah, just
And not only that, it like another good thing to add on to that comment that you just said about him not being bad, even if he wasn't a bad film. One of the examples that popped into my mind, I've got a soft spot for the movie, but I know it's got quite a number of problems, and it wasn't very well received. I'm not too sure what the temperature's like on it now, but the 2006 Poseidon.
oh
Um,
yeah, yeah,
I quite enjoyed him in that. And it's kind of strange, like, the way the trailers are and all of that, you really kind of get the idea that it's built up for him. And while he's a major player in it, he's not really the main character, if that makes sense. Um,
yeah. It's funny you mentioned that movie. I definitely want to get around to discussing that one eventually.
I do like it, and I understand the criticisms that it has, but it's just a good
Yeah,
example of in Kurt Russell's portfolio that he was awesome in that, and kind of a transition from being the chain smoking badass rebel who's not kowtowing to the machine empire, like King Mondo and the Cogs here. to being, the overprotective father, and then this, that, and the other. Like, the guy's had so much range.
Yeah.
Like when you look at him in Tango and Cash, and it's basically this with a nice kind of comedic color palette to it. Like, he's a cop. He's very well trained. He's not afraid to throw down. He's lethal in environment. He's very adaptable to the places he finds him in. He's basically Snake Plissken, but a little bit friendlier.
A bit more charm. Yeah.
Yeah, like he can get you there. I like actors that they don't go all in all the time. There's a lot of actors that do that. They go all in, and it's too much. You gotta dial it back a little bit.
Yeah. This is a great reveal where the plane's real identity flashes on the screen, and it's a wonderful musical score that really intensifies a lot of key moments in this film. I'm a big fan of the score. It's not a huge overblown score, but it's just really simple and effective.
And I like how it's not synthesized like most things going into the 80s was. Like, I like the lonely guitar strumming for his theme, especially the Escape from LA version. Like, just a few little notes here, there, and everywhere on scenes where, and he's not really doing anything when it plays. Like, it's less is more. It doesn't need to be this overly bombastic lead up. And there's Donald Pleasence there.
Yeah, and I never quite realized. I've seen this movie a lot of times since I was a boy. He's pretty scummy in this. It's not something I really picked up on as a kid. But yeah, rewatching it as an adult, I think it's a really interesting take on this character. He's I guess I'll talk more about it when Snake catches up with him. And there's a lot of really subtle background details that really sort of flesh out the world, like the fact that, in our country, like, police forces are left to the states to run, but when the opening lady narrates that the United States police force, like an army, it's fully federalized. It's it's just so interesting, some of this world building, and the film never sort of points that out again. It's just these little Easter eggs, little details really flesh out this world.
And it's the ultimate kind of tee up, isn't it? That narration, not only to the end of this film, but to the end of the second one as well. Whereas you can't trust anyone at that point, so shut everyone down. I'd be very keen to know how old Kurt Russell is here, and what the actual gap was between this and the second one, because a lot of those kind of themes, while they're not brought to the surface again, they are still very much prominent throughout this film and the sequel.
Yeah, well, it was a huge gap, 81 to what, 95 or 6?
96, 15. I think, yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge gap.
Which is longer than Arnold between T1 and 2, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. That was only 6 or 7 years. So, yeah, it's pretty astonishing that a sequel, they finally got around to it.
Yeah, I don't mind a belated kind of sequel from time to time.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we've had our fair share of bad ones, but there's also good ones. And like, a criticism you see a lot of for things like that is they play off like bad fan fiction, but it kind of bothers me a little bit when that's the attitude to a lot of these things, because like, you're making it sound like you can't have good fan fictions at all. And there's been some awesome ones. Who knows if they ever decided to revisit this property again, or try to remake it or anything like that. I'm not saying it can't be done good, but I'm not too sure. It's almost like an impossible uphill battle to do things like that in today's media climate, at least.
Yeah, well, they waited until they had a genuine take, whereas sequels these days seem to be sort of strike while the iron's hot, and crap one out after a couple of years, but because the second film wasn't all that well received when
But it
it
was
came
more
out.
like a home media release, wasn't it?
Well,
Like,
it's gotten a lot more love these days. Like, there's probably more to discuss and talk about with the sequel than this one, but I still really like this one, and just because of, like I mentioned, how just lean and tight and focused it is, whereas the sequel kind of has a lot more balls in the air juggling,
it
and that's the
does,
problem
yeah.
T2 has as well, because T2 has that kind of flabby middle bit when they've escaped from the hospital, and it's yeah, like, and some scenes in LA are like deliberate parodies and send-ups, but it's got a lot more love because it's a lot more relevant now than it was when it came out. As
Well, it's
as the Duke's Offsider comes out, I like this guy.
yeah. I like them when they're drunk. Yeah, it's when, as you were like, juggling balls in the air and like kind of stuff. One thing that is really stuck out to me, because I was introduced to Snake Plissken and John Carpenter. Basically, that would have been my first Carpenter movie, was Escape from LA, and I didn't get around to this one till quite a bit later. So I typically tend to lean a little bit more towards LA than this. But when I finally got around to watching this one of the things that just immediately bashed me over the head was just look at how dark this is. Like,
Yeah.
like there's quite a few comedic moments in LA. This is just so sterile. It's by the numbers. You've got your stormtroopers running around here. You've just got your first local in this barren New York and all of that. It's dark. It's very, very bleak. And I'm not saying that Escape from LA is sunshine and rainbows or anything, but it has a bit more room to maneuver with its color palette on things. Whereas
Yeah.
this, like, it just, yeah, like, unless it's a fire burning somewhere, it's very, very dark, and it's just it's a place you just don't want to be in. It gives me Shadow Temple vibes from Ocarina, where you just want to get the hell out of there. So if the mission was to make New York as just an unwelcoming nightmare palace, mission accomplished. I think.
Yeah, it's just all, decaying and dilapidated.
Yeah. I always love the flags behind the guest sitting down in the armchair in these movies. It's something they don't really do a lot anymore.
Yeah, you hardly ever see well-dressed sets anymore, because I guess, most of the genre films are on green screens and that now.
You notice that there's a
But, yeah,
rod
this is
holding the cuffs together and not a chain. I like that.
it's a great scene. It's a funny thing I sometimes think about. Because you're born when you're born, and you don't really sort of follow a lot of actors' careers when they're at their sort of peak and prime. And I think Lee Van Cleef's one of them. Like, he was sort of big in the 60s and 70s and sort of that era. But he's just seems like a great, great, great actor. I pretty much love every line he delivers in this movie, and just the cadence and tone in his voice and how he delivers it. He's an actor I really regret kind of not sort of following his work more closely.
Yeah, I think that's the lesson. You get to enjoy the things that are in the pop culture when they're coming out, which is one of the reasons why I'm very reluctant. Yeah, exactly. Which is why I'm very reluctant to tear a lot of new things apart quite the way other people are doing, because there's a lot of people who like to go to the movies on a Friday night still, and this is what they enjoy. Like, so like, times have changed a little bit, and tastes change, and like we were talking about the way filmmaking is made, with matte paintings and all of that. Well, that's changed as well. Like, things are phasing out, and people, like, they're not going to the movie to look for things like that. Like, they're going there to check something out that, a trailer or some post somewhere has whet their appetite for, and that's how that's how the movie game has always been played, hasn't it? Like, that machine has never changed and never will.
It's like how I don't Much the same like yourself. I go in the opposite direction. I try not to bash a lot of old stuff anymore, because this is a perfect Friday night popcorn movie.
Yeah.
It just hits all those kind of beats, and and there was a sort of a little bit of chatter online. Actually, put a pin in that. One of my favorite genre tropes, the arming up scene. As the camera sort of pans past Snake's arsenal. I noticed there was some shurikens in there.
Yeah, I was going to point out, as he was getting his jacket red, they made a mention that he had 2 purple hearts. Now, isn't that a decoration you get for sustaining an injury in the line of combat?
I believe it is, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting. We got quite a bit of information on who Snake was in that briefing then.
Yeah.
But now we're going over the weapons. It's yeah, I
And
love this. It's almost like a James Bond jab, isn't it? In kind of
Yeah,
a way.
I really love the like the getting ready, gives him the tour, walks him through the full range of guns, and there's a point to that scene because Hulk mentions the wrist device and the safety catch, which comes into play a bit later,
Yeah.
where they can track him from Liberty Island.
Yeah, I like the camo pants here. Like the all black stealth look, where he's a bit more like an official member of the like Federation or whatever they're calling themselves in Escape from LA. Is like I like that look and all, but I love the kind of street wear mercenary look that he had in the first film a bit better. Like
Yeah,
I think it
it's funny
speaks
you
more to
mention-
him than wearing something very sterile and just all black.
Yeah, it's funny you mention the costume because Kurt Russell gave a relatively recent interview about the costume and returning for the sequel, so he stayed in excellent shape. He was allowed to keep the costume and it still fit him. He wanted to wear the same costume for Escape from LA, with the pants and pretty much identical to how you see him here. But they decided to update his look in the second film to make it a bit more modern for the then 1990s. But you do see him at the start of that film with that exact costume on. And he was pretty proud of the fact that, like we just talked about, it's such a huge time between drinks, like a decade and a half. He was pretty stoked in this interview I was watching him that, yeah, he tried on his old clothes and they still fit
Man,
him.
I'm sure if you go and tap him today, he could still do it. I mean,
Yeah, probably.
he hasn't
I believe
changed
it.
all that much in all the years. I mean, he's gotten a bit greyer, but when has that ever stopped him? Like,
Yeah.
you check him out in that bone tomahawk, he still looks like a customer you don't want to screw with.
Yeah, and he's really good in Death Proof as well, the Tarantino one. Hugely, well, it's not underrated. Any Tarantino movie gets enormous amounts of hype,
Yeah.
but he's so good in it as well. As Hulk screwed him
I,
over.
I use this line every year when I have to go get my flu injection. What did you do to me, asshole? It's all in good fun. So they're basically miniature explosions, bombs in his arteries.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because he was going to fuck off in the plane.
Yeah, I know. He tries to do a similar thing in the second one, which I thought was just brilliant. Like, he's just that predictable. Like, it's just so... Yeah. One thing that I went through a bit of an escape from New York and LA phase in 2011 when Arkham City came out. And I couldn't help but think, if I was John Carpenter, I'd seriously consider some legal action, because Batman getting poisoned, being sent into a city, finding a cure and solving everyone else's problems. Gee, that sounds a lot like a Snake Plissken game, doesn't it?
Yeah, and all those elements work so well. It just gives the film such a tremendous focus. The countdown on the wrist bracelet is pure genius.
A
I
constant
think.
reminder you are going to
Oh
die.
yeah, and it keeps it focused. He can't afford to meander. He needs to get his ass into gear. It's a brilliant
I think
setup.
there's an actual term for that, I'm pretty sure, but I believe the Urban Dictionary variant is not fucking around in the writer's room. I remember
Yeah.
the end of Evangelion got a lot of praise for that when Asuka's in Unit 2 and almost immediately they sever the umbilical cable so she's operating on battery power, and you see the film makes a point to show the 5 minute counter kick off. And they
Yeah.
said, well, that's good because not only does that force the story to go, we know that storyline is going to end very soon to keep the main focus of the film moving forward. And this is a film that does that very well. And, you know, again, like Arkham City, while it's not a film, is a game that does that very well. Like, it forces the character to be in the environment, and they can't be screwing around all the time. So you're basically handcuffing yourself to the conclusion of the film. So you're not allowing yourself enough wriggle room to start screwing around.
Yeah. It's such a well done device when it's executed.
Like, it's already been
Effect.
2 hours, like, before he actually launches.
Yeah.
God, and I love the green. Like, I know I've said this a couple of times in the commentaries that we've done, but I absolutely love the one color lighting rooms, like the greens, the blues, the reds, the oranges. Like, I really wish that would start coming back. Like, I really don't like you got the red backlight, but the green light is in the foreground.
Yeah.
Just nice, high contrasting. Oh, yeah, it's just brilliant.
Yeah, these are some spectacular shots from the city from above. And just what a wasteland it's become.
What did Jim Cameron say when they were doing the revisit of T2 or something, and he said something to the effect of, yeah, people don't like movies that predict the future because it doesn't turn out the way that the film showed them. Well, there were places in Detroit that looked like the future that Kyle Reese is from now. When he did that recording, like, people, like, you only get told on the news what you get told. Like, some places in these areas are very, very bad.
It's a really sad shame, and even some cities here in our neck of the woods, some parts of them are just decaying.
What does Brad Wesley say? Bad element over there. Yeah, and I think in the jacket as well, didn't they make a mention that he was Air Force, Navy, something like that? So flying a plane is pretty... So, like, you're not questioning it now because they've just said that he had a background in it?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
I always love the close shave of the landing. Because it's something that almost gets him killed in the second one as well.
Yeah, and the just cementing it and piling on the pressure, how he got in, he's going to have to find a different way out.
Yeah. Totally cut off. And this is something that I miss as well. If you're gonna thrust the hero into a situation like this, I think the less of the allies, the better.
Yeah.
Like, I know, like, there's some exceptions to this. Like, there was the surfboarding guy in LA. There was Hershey in LA, and, like, Map to the Stars Eddie, who screwed him over, you know, eventually turned out to not be so bad. And, like, the more help that he had, the kind of, like, that's why the second one has a bit more of a comedic streak in it, whereas in this one, he's basically on his own from go to woe.
Yeah, and he does encounter Cabby in the brain a little bit while later, but for this for this particular little passage, he's going it alone.
Yeah, you slow down, dickhead. I'm the one who's dying. And I love the cutback to that because it gives you a good kind of time frame. So the flight over was pretty lengthy as well.
Yeah.
I love the graffiti. Just plastered over everything.
Yeah, as a kid watching this, it reminded me some sets of the slum level from Final Fight.
Probably
And,
what it was based on. The time frame works out. It would have come out around this time.
Yeah, and like some of the sort of subway levels and things like that.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's just
the metro.
Yeah, um, some of these like dilapidated buildings, yeah, with the graffiti and
And
the
that was
rubbish
that was a
everywhere.
good example of what I was just saying before. He walks past an oil drum on fire, and then that's like the only color change that happens, and the rest of it's just this bleak environment.
Yeah,
And this is something I love as well. Just walking these massive distances to get to everywhere, just out in
yeah,
the
it's a good.
street. It's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's a good point you mentioned just then, because that figures into the story a little while later when he sees an opportunity to grab the president, and Brain tells him, "Yeah, we're not going to get there fast enough. We need a car." So, and that's the impetus for Snake to get a vehicle. So it's a good point. Yeah, you just made.
Oh, like see, like there seems to be this thing, this trend lately, and just to use Batman again as the example, that is, I don't like seeing him tooling around in a car for the whole night. I mean,
Yeah,
patrolling's fine and all of that, but I love him on rooftops walking through the street to get to his objectives and that kind of thing. And I really like seeing this here. Like, this is our hero. There's no horse. There's no nothing. It's just boots and instinct, and we're just going to follow that and see where we go.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's the plane crash that from the beginning.
yeah. That's right.
And I believe this film has had a fair amount of homages paid to it as well. Like, I think one of the big ones I remembered when I was growing up was Cloverfield with the Statue of Liberty head in the street. I remember reading somewhere that what I think Matt Reeves and J.J. Abrams, they basically borrowed that as a little nod from this film. How on the
Yeah,
cover
okay.
art, how they're running from the head in the street.
Yeah,
So
Statue
Cloverfield
Field.
did that as a little thumbs up.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's an awesome visual of the head just in a random, city district like that. It's yeah, wow.
Yeah, there's been lots of sort of the two that spring to mind. Obviously, you got that iconic, unforgettable ending to the original Planet of the Apes,
Yeah,
and the I remember the brief shot of the head floating when the asteroid hits in Deep Impact. There's that shot of it briefly bouncing underwater.
one that always pops into my head. Not really a movie, but from a video game, was the splash screen from Red Alert 2, with the Kirov
Mm.
airships hovering
Oh,
over
yeah.
the Statue of Liberty. Like, Lady Liberty just makes an awesome visual. Like, I know she's
Yeah,
awesome in a lot of other ways, but she's an awesome. Every time you use her in a film, just go nuts with it. I think
yeah,
I love the old Rialto theatre as well. I know we have a few in our country. They're fairly rare, uh, but there are a few that still operate around here. I'd love to actually go and see a film in one of them. When as Snake
yeah,
walked up to the speaker box and all of that. It was more of an American thing, but Australia does have a couple still doing their own little shtick. I'd like to see
yeah,
one there someday.
yeah. There are a couple, but yeah, there's not too many left here anymore, sadly.
Yeah, no, there's only about three or four I can think of. Yeah, this is really cool. This I remember drinking in a pub with a mate once, and there was live music playing, and he said something that's always stuck with me ever since, and that was, see, this is the real treat of going to a venue like this, because live music is just so much better than listening to noise coming out of a speaker.
Yeah, it's just there've just been an explosion of it in the last few years. Yeah, I tend to think it's because of COVID with everyone cooped up. Now people are just going out all the time. But yeah, live entertainment's really great. Yeah,
Yeah, like, yeah, it really does add a whole new notch to it.
Ernest Borgnine, he plays Cabby.
Yeah, far out. I'm gonna look that up after we've done this. Just how old was Kurt Russell during this? Far out. And this is something that I've always liked, is that everyone seems to know who he is
Yeah, it's
over both films.
a running gag. I've heard of you. You're Snake Plissken.
Yeah, really kind of, and like, no, like, he doesn't say anything back or anything. See, that's something that
Yeah.
I really miss with. Well, it doesn't so much have to be the main lead. I guess it's just characters in general. I like to use the rule from The Office when they're talking about who the next manager should be, and Angela starts just dribbling on, and Oscar just cuts her off. No, no, no. Look, we stopped Kevin from talking for the same reason. You got to have something to say if you're talking. And I really like that about Snake Plissken in this film, is that he really only speaks when he has to, or he does have something to say.
Yeah, not everything needs to be explained. The flip side is, some things are better left to the imagination. Like they're just these, yeah, little wrinkles in the story that don't detract from it. We can't do a JJ and like deliberately introduce major mysteries that the entire plot hinges on and then not explain it. But like, backstory elements don't really need to be explained. The only ones that do are if they're relating to the current story. Like, so it's
Yeah.
yeah, and I guess there has been some sort of chatter off it on. I'm not sure if it's ever serious or not to kind of flash back and show how Snake was caught. But everything we know about him in both movies getting nabbed, the film touches on. Like we know when he encounters Brain in a little bit, just through their dialogue, we know what happened to him. So we don't really need a 2 or 3 hour movie that explains everything.
Well, there'll be something on Paramount Plus or something like that, and it'll just be
Yeah,
called Pliskin. It'll be the first of a 5-season deal. They'll all be
yeah,
30 episodes long, um, explaining, and Snake won't appear at all. Instead, there'll be another character called Barry, and he'll be the Tobias Beckett of the Snake Plissken universe. Yeah, well, I'd say I don't like. I understand prequel predictability and is a problem with a lot of people, but again, that's not to say you can't have good prequels. But there's a lot of fan pushing for movies and adaptations on things from films like such as this. Like the amount of times you see things like people wanting a Pliskin prequel to explain how he lost the eye. The eye doesn't matter.
yeah.
Like why do you want to see that? I find that just rather bizarre that people ask for things like that.
Yeah, I we'll have to look up how the eye patch idea came about because it's again another wonderful little detail that just makes him look so distinctive.
And I think also with your things like your Rambos and all of that, they were around at the time just to really kind of harden him up a bit more to make him stand out from everything else. Because you
Yeah,
got to remember, like this like Rocky 3 was just around the corner from this and all of that. So you think about guys like Stallone in their heyday and T1. Like, I mean, this predates T1 for God's sake.
yeah,
So differentiating yourself visually like that was a very, very clever idea. The eye patch. It's without a doubt Snake's most distinguishing feature. Um, like when you think Snake Plissken, the eye patch is the first thing that pops into your head. And I do like these. He does this a few times in LA. I love this kind of sitting down, just taking a time out to himself. Like people talk a lot today in today's movie climate about, oh well, I really want to have my heroes humanized and all of that. What's more humanizing than sitting down and taking a load off? Like that's who can't relate to that? Just pulling up a chair and sitting down.
yeah. I always remembered that scene. I do remember the one you're talking about in the sequel, where it makes a point of him, yeah,
Yeah,
just
he just sits
having a
down like for
breather.
no real reason, but just because he can. Yeah.
Well, he's out of ideas at the moment.
Mm.
His lead has led to a dead end, so he's just taking a few minutes to ponder his next move. But I like how the a wonderful little detail. He makes a point to pick the chair up and sit it upright before sitting down.
Yeah.
That it just that little bit of magic dust you sprinkle on it. He could have just sat down anywhere. He could have sat up against a car or on a ledge or something, but Yeah, just that little fairy dust to really make the scene that much better.
Yeah, what's the significance of turning the chair up the right way? Maybe because he wants to sit down.
Well,
Yeah,
it's just a little clue to his character.
yeah, that's what I mean, and it's just as simple as that. But you'll see a lot of film critiques that would take that and they would make an hour-long video talking about, the merits and the meanings behind why Snake Plissken likes to upend chairs and sit them upright before sitting down. It's just a little character beat, nothing more, nothing less. Like, that's
Yeah.
really all it is. There's no in-depth meaning behind it at all.
And it's good continuity, this scene, because Hawk's offsider said that they live in the subways, so they come up underground. They come up from the ground to do their raids. Really nice bit of connective tissue there between that and the earlier scene.
I always love the "gotta smoke" line. It's basically the "I've got a bad feeling about this" of the Snake Plissken duology. Yeah, I like this diner here. And that's one thing that I think really has become a lost art. I know I mentioned, you know, colouring sets to make them stand out and be different. So, like, you've got these sharp colours playing off of each other. But I don't like characters finding themselves in multiple different settings, but the setting isn't really changing. Like a good example of that is you watch anything that's like high-end government offices or anything like that. You've got one character doing something awesome in an office building just to go to another office building and do the same thing in an office building. Yes, they're two different sets, but it's still just a fucking office building. I like how we're in a diner now when we were just near Air Force One wreckage. We were in a decorated set of what we could see was a war hero with Hawk. I love how none of the sets repeat themselves. We were just in an old Rialto theatre. Like, don't move the character physically to a different location when it's still the same location. A lot of things do that today, and it just annoys the shit out of me.
Yeah.
I absolutely wish I had this ability to not say anything and she's a sure thing.
Yeah. He just kept talking and talking.
Yeah, Lou. God, I tell you, they love popping out of the ground in this movie, don't they?
Yeah.
Now, I don't believe these are like the surgical mutants we see in the second one. These really are just, a bunch of hood rats, aren't they?
Yeah, they're just some of Duke's minions. Yeah, because no, it's nothing like the sequel. These just seem like, just these night raiders that the army guy at the start mentioned.
I quite enjoy that. Yeah,
forage.
Yeah, wall them off. Yeah, it's like playing zombies, mate. You just got to cut them off. See, and now, like, look at where we are. Like the bathrobe, the bathtub curtain. I love the shooting, the outline of the. See, yeah, I mentioned this earlier. The adaptability of the hero. I know another great example of this was Michael Biehn as Kyle Reese. Like, within the first 5 minutes of returning to the 80s, he's clothed, he's armed, and he has a address. And he's on the move, and the Terminator's been there for a while and lagging behind. Snake shows a lot of characteristics like that, and this was before Terminator 1, where, shooting the outline of the door to break through it, being on the ball in the diner when they come out of the floor. He's very adaptable to the situation. He doesn't always get through unscathed, and sometimes the villains do get the better of him. But he's very, very adaptable in the situations that he's in. Not to the point where he's... I think they call it plot armor today.
Yeah, he's very resourceful.
I mean, if you establish a hero as something, or your main lead as something, it seems a bit silly to not have them do that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the yellow cab company, which is a real thing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, not for us. They don't do the yellow cabs down here. Down here, we just call them chips. So when do we get our first whiff of the Duke?
Yeah, he's
I was going to say, he's taken his time showing up. I don't remember it being this long. Like, almost about an hour in. He hasn't shown up yet.
yeah, he's not far away, but we still have a little while to go. Cabby's great because cab drivers, they're always in the know, aren't they? They're always up to date on the latest.
Well, just about
news.
everyone who gets in there after work wants to vent about the boss. Anyone coming out of a lawyer firm wants to bitch about the ex, soon to be.
And he drops the information that Duke has the president captive.
Yeah, because he's not actually aware that that's what he's looking for, is he?
Yeah, because the tracker led to a dead end. The hobo had it.
Yeah, the Duke. There we go. So he's actually mentioned, which I thought was really cool. That's the title that he goes for, the Duke.
Yeah, the whole phrase is so cool. Like the Duke of New York, he's a number one.
Yeah, well, I'm the Godfather, Mr. Big, El Numero Uno, the Lord of the Rings. It's an interesting rank. What is a Duke?
Oh, it's a British medieval. I think.
Isn't it like the step up from like a lord or baron or something?
A lord is when you own land. You're a lord.
Oh, all right, yeah.
I think a king can make you a duke or an earl.
Yeah.
The Brits, they love their aristocracies.
Yeah, who doesn't want to be special? Yeah, here we go. Which I believe is where like Bane and Batman start punching up almost 30 years later.
Yeah, okay.
Like, it's just crazy when you look at the locations that a film like this has gone to, and you look at them now. Like, I know some of them are still there, some of them aren't, as we mentioned with the Two Towers.
Yeah, well, I was interested to it's funny you mentioned that locations. Apparently I was reading a lot of this movie was filmed in St. Louis, not New York.
Yeah.
Which was interesting to hear.
I think this is a perfect example of a formula that works, isn't it? Because, like, I know, like, that's what a sequel does. A sequel, recontextualizes what came before, and it's beat for beat the same thing. Like, you've got Cabby, you got Map to the Stars Eddie, and all of that. If you've seen Escape from New York, you've seen LA, but the similarities are really only skin deep.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of things going on with that. I think, yeah, because this plays a much more straighter bat than the sequel does.
Yeah.
But the sequel has gained a newfound relevance because the Escape from LA did predict the rise of political correctness. Like the political correctness was very much in its infancy in the 1990s, and censorship is on the rise, and airbrushing unsavory bits out of history is on the rise, and Escape from LA predicted all of that decades before we started to see it
Yeah.
on a bigger level. Like the idea that where we're going back and censoring certain scenes from movies and shows because they make us a bit uncomfortable is just abhorrent, and putting things on a government approved list so they get to decide what you can and can't watch. Yeah. Escape from LA, which was not well received, it had some good reviews. I think Roger Ebert gave it a good review at the time, but it was pretty much widely panned. But it certainly got a lot more love now. This, but by that same token, this is an old film, and it doesn't get a lot of love because I disagree with it. But some people think, like on a technical level, this doesn't hold up. But it's so unfair. It's a movie that's 40 odd years old. It's really
Yeah,
harsh to judge.
you can't look on a film that's 40 years
Yeah,
old through a modern day lens because
that's
you're
right.
setting yourself up for disappointment because the toolbox isn't the same. Like,
Yeah, you can't just put a red line through a movie because it's old.
yeah, no, yeah, I don't agree with that. And like technically, it doesn't hold up. No, I think technically it still works very, very well. This film, I just think like the construction of the film in comparison to the sequel seems to um, like the sort of similar to like Batman and Batman Returns. Like it is a much better put together kind of work
Yeah.
than the first. Now that's not saying the first one's crap. Like I always say, like I prefer T1 to T2, and some people translate that to I think the second one's shit. Like no,
Yeah,
that's
it's
not what I
always
said.
zero sum.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
you
yeah,
can't praise something online because it's automatically taken as shitting on something else. But this one is like it's playing a straight bat. It's taking everything really seriously.
yeah,
Whereas in the sequel, Carpenter's having a little bit more fun with like there's and it's quite deliberate, I think. There's scenes in the second one where Snake's deliberately being a parody of himself, and it just works. It's not meant to sort of throw shade at the movie. It's all very deliberate because Carpenter's too good and he's too experienced to not know what he's doing. But this one is just treating it dead seriously in terms of its storytelling and the story it's trying to tell.
yeah. That's what I mean. Like the whole wisecracking smartass skip the commentary Pliskin thing didn't happen until Escape from LA. Like in
Yeah.
this one, like he's very much this kind of rogue. Like there's a reason why they put bombs in his body for God's sake to make sure he plays by the rules. That tells us everything we need to know about this guy. I do always like the kind of happy-go-lucky characters in these sorts of movies.
Yeah, the supporting cast, again, just the caliber of it that they managed to get. We mentioned it in the opening credits, but like just the caliber of these actors: Ernest Borgnine, Harry Dean Stanton, Lee Van Cleef, Donald Pleasence. My goodness, I mean that is top quality acting.
Yeah, I love the motorcade.
Yeah,
And this
I
is
just
awesome beat how he just stands there with his arms folded, like, and everyone else scurries off.
I always remembered the chandeliers as a kid, as
Yeah.
the Duke appears, and
Yeah,
I
the
quite like the
chandeliers on the
theme.
outside.
Yeah, and I quite like the theme that's playing as well.
Is that
um,
that that weird music?
no, yeah, that's Tabby's theme, but like the Duke's actual theme as the music kicks into gear.
Yeah, the Duke. Yeah, like I'm not knocking Cuervo Jones or anything, but I do quite like the Duke. Um,
Yeah,
Again, like
he's
Cuervo was played up for some gags here and there, like 2 points for a basket, no 3 point bullshit. You don't really get those kind of beats with the Duke.
yeah, he's I think the Duke is a bit more effective than Cuervo in the
Yeah,
sequel.
I agree, 100%.
Yeah, I didn't realize. Sorry, I quickly looked it up. Isaac Hayes passed away at 65, so I'll say he's relatively young. Because he did he play? I think he played the chef on South Park. I don't quote me on it. I was never a regular viewer of South Park, but
No, I
he,
don't find that kind of humor particularly funny. No.
yeah, he was the voice of I think the chef in like when the show was really at its sort of peak in the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, I love the bars on the window
Yeah, it's
of the
really
car.
cool.
Yeah. I love when they give Snake these little beats. And one thing that I found quite interesting in the comparison to the mob that have sent him into New York to the mob that they, and not to gush on about LA, but it is kind of hard to not, I mean, it is really kind of hard to do the teardown of New York without that kind of contrast. Like if you take that, like especially in, like I know we just said you can't really look back on a film this old with a modern day lens, but it's kind of hard when you get caught up into the trap of when the sequel that was 15 years in the making to when this one came out is more socially relevant today, and you kind of, it's hard to not do that.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus! The steak on the head.
Yeah, what's wrong with Broadway?
And I think that's maybe that was another reason why he chose LA for the sequel, because then you can use things like Sunset Boulevard and all of that. So you can go for the big ones. I mean, like when people talk America, New York is obviously one of the big ones. The Big Apple, like locations like that. LA is always a big one for a lot of foreigners. The amount of Aussies that talk about LA is crazy, at least in my circles.
Well, they're the two cities. I mean, it's
two big ones. Yeah,
to name a city in America, it's gonna be one of those two. It's you've got New York on the east coast and LA on the west.
Yeah, that's right. I wonder how long it would have taken, because I've often wondered about this since when we do these kind of earlier movies, like this wall here of cars all piled up. I wonder what the set design and all that's like, and what the construction turnaround time is. Like you see people busting their backs building the sets for like the Star Wars prequel movies and all of that. I wonder just how tall of an order it would have been in the 80s. Like this is another very well composed shot. You know, some of that could be a matte painting and that kind of thing, but as he drives through the blockade, you can see that they're actual vehicles. So I wonder those kind of big set designs, because I remember reading in the 2000s setting I Am Legend in New York the way that they did, because it was, they believed thematically showing emptier places in New York where, you know, it's a city where no one sleeps. Like something's always happening in New York. So to show barren areas like that was going to be a bit more chilling for the audience, and it definitely worked. But they got a lot of flack for closing down areas to build sets like that to make things look overgrown and worn down and that kind of thing. I wonder what the pressure would have been like, or the kind of manpower you'd need to do that in a film as early as 81.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to sort of think about and read about, because some of these shots, and just the detail they put into the sets, and it's all real. So, and it would have, you must think it would have taken ages to get the look and feel of it right, with a filmmaker of the quality, the high caliber of John Carpenter.
Yeah, I suppose that's probably what it comes down to. I mean, if you've got someone with, you know, that kind of background, you know, being captain of the ship, I'm sure you can do just about anything at any time. I just wonder, you know, just being a person working on the production of this, to get these kind of, like these vehicles to look the way they look, to stack them up, and, you know, to break all this glass down and graffiti all the walls, and like just what kind of time that would have been like. Because like the magic rule for, you know, movies is what, like 3 years in between installments and all of that. I wonder what the making of this would have been like, trying to dress things up like that.
Yeah, I've always kind of had a fascination, like, with, you know, production design and set design, and because it's nothing's by accident. Like the ones who really know what they're doing, that there's a point and a purpose to everything, to reinforce the narrative, or to highlight a theme, or an element that a movie is trying to tell. So, like, very rarely is anything an accident in good movies.
The knife throw, you got to have that. And this is something that I always gush over, and I love it. You know, we get the constant glances back at the watch to tell us how much time has lapsed and how long he's been there, and he gets more disheveled over the film. I love that he's got the bum leg now. Like, I believe he has the limp for the entire film after that.
Yeah, yeah, I was about to say that. He's wounded here, and he stays wounded for the rest of the movie. It's not a typical action movie where he sort of walks it off and he's back to normal in the next scene.
Donald plans, like, case in point, the president has a normal stride, and he's like just barely ahead of him, limping around, and he's like 20, 30 years his senior.
Yeah.
Now, I'll keep an eye out for that until the end. Yeah, I love this kind of, you got to have the headband. Now, one question that I did want to pop was, whenabouts did Mad Max rock up on the timeline? Did this predate it?
No, was the first Mad Max, it may have snuck in the late 70s, 79, 80. But I think Mad Max 2...
It'd be razor close, yeah.
Yeah, I think Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, was around 82 or 3. But yeah, my memory is sort of a bit hazy with that. I think, yeah, from memory, Mad Max 1 may have just snuck in at the end of the 1970s.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of these kind of dystopian films. They really borrowed a lot from each other back then.
Yeah, I guess because, yeah, the sort of Cold War was brewing around that time. Lots of sort of speculation and attention about, nuclear war or the potential for it. So that informed a lot of sort of genre fiction at the time. The specter of nuclear war and devastated cities and things like that.
Which coincidentally is what the Terminator would kind of put a cherry on top to a couple of years after this.
Yeah. And there were some real seminal projects that came out of Britain at that time. There was one called Threads, which is horrific. It's just such an absorbing film about the sort of realistic consequences of a nuclear attack, and I think it may have been called The Day After, about a nuclear attack. Yeah, that's really sort of was in people's headspaces at the time as the Cold War was brewing.
Yeah,
tensions with America and Russia were escalating.
I always love the cut back to the control rooms in movies like this. Like guys who don't get their hands dirty but end up getting just totally screwed over.
Yeah, I enjoy them as well, much like the Under Siege discussion.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah,
for the guys around the desk, and yeah, I love all these little genre tropes. They're a dime a dozen in every kind of movie like this, but when they're executed this well, they're really fun.
I never realised we had a dawn shot there. Well,
Yeah,
I suppose
great.
because the clock does have it had 24 hours on it.
Yeah. What a great shot of Lee Van Cleef there.
Yeah, I was gonna. I really would like to know whose decision it was for the earring, the piercing that he has there on the left ear.
Yeah. Again, it's just another wonderful detail.
And this is something that would obviously be criticised today, and I don't understand when people do this. They'll say things like, "Well, why didn't they just kill him when they knocked him out?" Oh, because the end of the movie needs to happen. Well, I would very much like to explain this real quick, and that is, guys, every single movie, any TV show, any book you've read, the plot needs to happen because that product needs to be made. There's never been an exception to that. You know, why
Yeah.
was Goku allowed to survive the planet Vegeta eruption when Frieza destroyed it? Because Dragon Ball needed to happen. Like, why did they come and unplug Neo and not someone else? Well, we needed the Matrix to happen. Like, why didn't they just kill Snake Plissken then? Because we need him to get to the end of the film, so the film can happen.
Yeah, because
There's,
he's the star of the show. That's why.
yeah, you know, it just blows my mind. It's like, yeah, people say that as a criticism for movies all the time, especially with a lot of modern ones. And it's one of those, it really is just one of those guys, it's just a movie answers. It. When did we forget that? I love the
Yeah.
Michael Jackson shoulder jacket Duke's got going on here. This is probably my favorite costume for him. And then just jeans. Then just wearing jeans with it. It's just so cool.
Yeah. And there's a good moment Isaac Hayes does here in a minute that I've always remembered. It's something that the film doesn't kind of really flesh out about. He was on his way to a peace summit. I think it's implied somewhere that America is at war, and the president, he was on his way. Yeah, that moment there just points the gun at the brain. Get moving, brain. I always remembered that moment. Like the Duke doesn't even look at him, just points the gun at him. Get moving. So they need the president back, but they also need the recording to help with these peace talks.
Yeah.
And it's something about energy, some type of energy fission. It's well, I mean, it's not overly essential to the plot. The goal is to get out of New York, but it's
Yeah, all of the stuff happening with the president is like purely coincidental. It's circumstantial. It has nothing pertaining to Pliskin at all, other than
yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
MacGuffin.
yeah, this kind of stuff. I suppose. Oh, hang on. I had something I was going to start going on a bit of a tangent about then, and then it didn't quite. Oh, yeah, that's right. So this was 81, and it's talking about, you get subtle hints of warfare and nuclear this and that and the other. See, I find this very interesting with where we are now with our kind of aging populace. And no offense, but a lot of people who were born in the 80s or were born in the mid to late 70s, and like some of those guys are like knocking 50 and all of that now, and a lot of them are saying like 80s was the best decade and this, that and the other, purely based on the pop culture of the decade. The 80s were a time where there was a lot of tensions rising, there was wars going on, there was depressions, it wasn't a good time. What you remember about the 80s, that's great for what you remember about it, but there's no way I'd want to go back to the decade for real. Not that I was ever in it, but I have a similar thing about the 90s. And you look at the sequel for this that came out in the 90s, and the things that didn't quite come to fruition, although they were there, just not to that extent until now. I wouldn't want to go back then either. I remember fond things about it, but it wasn't a good time at all.
Yeah. Well, it's an illusion. It's like a little lie we tell ourselves. It only seems simpler and happier because the era you were born in, you were a child in, what you remember about the 80s and 90s is eating Cocoa Puffs and watching cartoons. So in our minds, we think it was such a better time. But yeah, even the 70s were such a tumultuous time with the energy crises and things like that. The 2020s have just been like utter carnage at a societal level. Like the decade we're in now, and the societal upheaval. It's there's wars and conflicts breaking out. In multiple places abroad.
Yeah.
But there's no doubt people born in the 2020s were like decades from now. Man, those times were awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was only awesome because you're playing with trucks and eating Cocoa Pops every day.
Yeah,
That's the only reason I think it was a happy time.
Yeah, like I was born in the early 90s, but I'm very much a 2000s kid, and a lot of the things that I loved and kind of shaped me where I am now were products of the 2000s, but I wouldn't want to go back to the 2000s. And when people ask me, oh, well, why is that? You mustn't have such a good fondness for them. Well, the 2000s kicked off with 9/11 happening for a start,
Yeah.
and then we had like the Afghanistan war and all that kind of jazz, which didn't get resolved until about a decade later. Um, like there was a lot of terrible things that were happening even in the 2000s. But don't worry, we're going to celebrate the 20th release of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. We won't remember the chaos and the rebuilding of 9/11. No, we'll talk about a movie that came out when we were kids. It's just crazy to me how that all goes. And I just thought it would be interesting to bring that up. This is a film from '81, and it very much puts into stark contrast some major things that were happening at the time, but it just totally washes over people because all they see is an awesome action flick with Kurt Russell, and there's kind of an undercurrent of that people aren't really acknowledging because it was just a cool movie they saw as a kid.
Yeah, and I never picked up on this until Kurt Russell pointed it out. The snake tattoo.
Yeah.
Leave it to your imagination, but it leads down to...
his snorkel.
He pulled his snorkel out. I never ever picked up on that ever, but when Kurt Russell broke down all of his roles, that's one thing he did mention. The gag is, the tail of the snake is meant to lead to... Well, use your imagination.
Yeah, it reminds me of people getting tattooed above their snorkel. They get "enjoy the ride." And I'm like, what does Val Kilmer say in Tombstone? It's a pair of fellow sophisticates.
This is another great trope. You've got to take on the massive henchman.
Yeah, it's the final fight Andor. You got to fight the Andor and Andor's cousin. Which in a strange way is another little throwback to Final Fight. You mentioned Final Fight earlier. You get kidnapped before you fight Eddie, the corrupt cop, right. And you literally get placed into a wrestling cage as well. So it makes me wonder, there might be a bit of a correlation there. You might be onto something. This is another little nod.
Yeah. I love the look on Kurt Russell's face. He's like, Christ. It's so great.
But what I love the most, though, is that I've got to deal with this idiot now. But I also love the way he plays it. Yeah, he's held up dealing with this, but he's also got bigger things to worry about because he's still going to be dead soon. So while he's looking at this as like a minor inconvenience because there's bigger shit going on in the background, I absolutely love how he does that, and he does it with a look.
Yeah, like everything is communicated in like one look, one shot, one blink.
He's so good at that. No words.
There are no words.
It's not a shock, whatever it is. And I love how just all these people know who he is. And there's like this unspoken bounty that's on Snake Plissken through both films.
Yeah, and they respect like the law of the jungle. When he offs this bloke, they all, like they just, only the strong survive in this brutal world.
Yeah, here we go. Go on, give him what for. It's funny how people talk about like a good thing about this, two guys in a ring, a fight that would absolutely never happen in any real event. You buy it here because there's no rules in New York at this particular point in time. But a lot of people talk about the realism of Rocky IV, and I start cracking up laughing at people saying that. I'm like, don't ever use the word realism and Rocky IV in the same sentence ever again. It's just a movie and it's having fun with it. They're two different weight sizes. That fight would never happen in real life. We know that. But it's just a movie.
Yeah.
Like, same deal here. Like, oh, there would never be a real fight like this between two guys of two different weight classes. It's just a movie, and look at how it's happening. Like, oh, far out.
Yeah.
I can't wait for this Muppet to get offed.
Yeah, and it's a. Yeah, I probably should have talked more about him. He got a small but crucial role. He just thinks he's untouchable because he's doing soft cider, and he just lords it over everyone. But this is quite a very good scene.
I love the Duke dresses up the president as a woman.
Because the guy knows he's full of shit. And yeah, Maggie just offs all of them. It's really good. And it's unexpected.
He just gets
like
shanked.
We're expecting Snake to rescue the president, but it's actually Brain who gets him out.
I love the pinball machine in the executive office. Just in the background there. And the mannequins.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was under the impression that the snake tattoo doesn't it have a different design in the second one? Don't they have fun with it and it changes position? It's sort of like I know like Vega has a snake tattoo and I guess it's up to the artist in Street Fighter, but they have some fun and they move the snake around depending on whatever game that he's in.
Yeah, quite possibly. I did.
I thought it faced the other way in LA.
Escape. Yeah, I watched Escape from LA about a month or two ago, but it was kind of only half watching it. I'll try and watch it carefully and try and confirm that for real. It wouldn't surprise me. They did I mentioned briefly they wanted to update his look a bit for the sequel.
It's a snake tattoo on the stomach. Why the stomach? Like it's another one of those things, yeah. Yeah, trash cans as shields.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the baseball bat with nails in it. Like, just the brutal kind of barbaric nature of what New York's like. And you're right, this film is very, very serious when it does things like this. And you compare that to the ripple of this in LA is just a basketball game that they'll shoot you if you miss a shot. Whereas in this one, it's just you two guys killing each other.
As a kid, and it's funny how memory works, because I always thought he did that kind of Indiana Jones style, where the guy's shaping up with a sword and Indy just shoots him with the gun. I thought, like my memory as a kid, I forgot it. It is. It's kind of it's shot as like a sort of drawn out fight with multiple rounds, but sort of rewatching it again, I wasn't expecting that. I thought from memory, Snake just sort of dodges a few swings and then hits him in the back of the head. But no, I was totally misremembering it. It is a sort of drawn out fight he just went through.
I love the dead body just hanging over the ropes.
Yeah.
Where he went out and just leave him there. And also when you mention that drawn out fight, look at the thrashing that Snake's got all over his ribs where he's been hit.
Yeah.
Like he's got these heavy bruises all over him now from the fight.
Yeah.
I just missed that. Like I'm over the pretty boy fucking shaved chest shit that all these movie stars go in for today, like your Chris Evans and all of that. Just give me a bloke, man, who's not afraid to get flogged up.
Yeah.
You know?
And the wrist bracelet came into play with the safety catch, so they know that Plissken's still alive at least.
Well, it's the day
I always
after
thought
now.
it was a clever point as a boy watching it. I didn't quite get the significance until Hawk said only Plissken knew it had a safety catch on it. So they only he could have pressed it.
Yeah. And there's the limp again. And he's got the band tied around it, the rag.
Yeah, they took the time to bind his wound.
See, and that's what I mean. Don't do the Rambo 3. Don't shoot the hero through the leg and then have him get up and put weight on that same leg to fight a tank. And that happens. I think that happens in the third one, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was really cool. Like we talked about injuries in '65, where Mel Gibson had a lot to answer for the stupid dislocated shoulder. Like even if you've dislocated your shoulder like 6 times, it's still going to lay you out for a bit, no matter when you do it or how you do it. And this is something that this is something that I love about the Plissken movies, is that when he gets hurt, they absolutely bend over backwards to make it stick. Like I love the limp, and it's gotten worse. Like he's barely hopping on it now, whereas before he was kind of walking on it, sort of.
Yeah.
And he probably would have taken out the wrestler in like one shot had he not have been injured prior to that.
Yeah, more than likely.
Keys quick. Brain. Now, this was something that really annoyed me a little bit towards the end of LA. I think they do a similar thing here as well, and that is like the entire supporting cast just get offed in the final escape. Like you remember with Hershey and all of that, they just get burnt up in the back of the helicopter.
Yeah, it's a good point you've made there, because it does factor into the end when he does talk to the president.
Yeah.
So put a pin in that, because that's a really good point.
Yeah, like I said, I am a bit foggy on how this one plays out, but that was something that always just annoyed me in the second one, but we'll get to that when we get to it.
Yeah,
so we got this 2-seater car here.
Yeah.
Oh, far out. You know what I love the most? Like, obviously, there's this common thing that goes around, and I think it's arguable at this point, and that is you'll never get better lighting than natural lighting, and like that's true. I love the daylight sort of streaming in through the windows.
Yeah.
Here, because we know that it's sun up now, and you've got like random lighting from outside, like the wall they're running at is lit by natural light.
Yeah.
Like it's just awesome seeing that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really picking up pace now. A cabbie's here to save the day. Ernest Borgnine, he's really good. He's just looking around bewildered.
I love the fence grates on everything. Like on car windows, and well, because like as we said earlier, when he got to the Air Force One wreckage, it's very well established that having a car is very beneficial in there. So no doubt someone will kill you for one. If they see you driving around in one, they'll just kill you and take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Got to pop the tape in.
Yeah, Cabby, he's like the MVP at the moment. He's got the escape vehicle, he's got the tape.
And I love how it's an actual voicemail that's hardwired into the card. You see, it's something that it's a tape deck you'd have on your office desk for your answering machine. It's not an actual one in a car.
Yeah, the tape deck.
Yeah, it's like why have that? Why not just have it be the regular car one? Because that's boring. Have a bit of fun with it. I missed the old car chase. I know we dabbled in that with Point Break when we talked about that, but I missed the, like you see the Duke go into the underpass and then it pans up and they nip straight across. Like, I really miss that. And City of Angels did a similar thing during the curb chase, how he took off, but the way the camera was positioned, Ash was up on the high rise, and like I just miss the craft of a good chase.
Well, I love geography. It's good when movies do little details like that, because it gives you a sense of scale and direction, so you know where everyone is and where everyone's traveling and where everyone is trying to get to. It's really good. Yeah, and it established in the opening narration that the bridge is a mind, and it's established a little earlier that Brain has a diagram of where the mines are located. And that's how he was planning his escape. Brain goes off behind the Duke. Yeah, I quite and yeah, like that point you just made earlier. It's all of their deaths are handled really well here. It's a yeah, there's a surprising amount of depth to it. I quite and particularly Maggie's fate is really handled well done. And Cabby, yeah, he meets a sorry end here where he's just caught in the blast.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like LA did this very unceremoniously, but there was kind of a side to that, and that was with the little with the woman that Snake meets. He gives her a gun and tells her to look out for herself, and she's
Yeah,
immediately gunned down.
yeah, I do remember that. Yeah,
And like we talked about in '65, how nature is cruel and all of that, but that and during the wrestling match in this film, talking about survival of the fittest and all of that, and just how easy it is to get offed um, in these kind of things. Like it really is that simple.
yeah. And Brain's death is handled really well as also no, not that way, this way, and he's the one who's made the error. Oof.
Yeah, I suppose it gets to him a little bit.
Yeah, and I think Maggie's is the most effective just because of just because of the acting here. Like, there's no dialogue; it's just a look, and just holds her hand out for the gun.
Yeah, far out. Yeah, I think that's a very. I know there was a couple of things in the '80s that went out of their way to make examples of this, and you don't. Not everyone comes home all the time, and that was one of the big pushes with the death of Optimus Prime. Was showing someone dying and the leader dying, like that. Like it does happen sometimes, which I think probably as far as pop culture goes, with a lot of the people that we have who are prominent in communities today, that probably would have been their first taste of something like that. But this film, yeah, it doesn't pull any punches. Far out.
Yeah, and it's just yeah, what a wonderfully acted scene. Maggie is yeah, I didn't catch her name in the credits, but she's really good here in this particular sequence.
I love the little strobe light things all up the corridor on this bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I try not to remain silent for too long, but there comes a time when you see a sequence like that, and you just got to sit back and take it in. Yeah, far out.
Yeah, Maggie's death was really well executed there.
Look, I've got no problem with characters dying. It's when you, I don't know, blow up an airlock and suck them out as a background extra. IG Admiral Akbar.
Yeah, well, it was all done through the acting. She
Yeah,
doesn't say a word. She just holds her hand out with the gun. You understand her motives just purely from the expressions on her face for the
yeah.
next few moments.
Alrighty. You gotta love these sort of. Yeah, you gotta do all this.
Yeah, lowering the winch.
Yeah, you gotta have this. See, well, this is something that I don't think LA had, because LA was separated by an earthquake, whereas in this there's just this massive long bridge
Yeah.
that can get you back to where you need to be. Like there was none of that. And I love that, like the leg is given out on Snake like 4 times in that one moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I mean.
This
Like,
is
just
good acting
yeah,
from Kurt Russell as well. Just the frantic look on his face. He acted really well in this scene. You really you really can empathize with him that he's just so out of time, and there's still it he's got to take on a much bigger man.
Not to mention
Wounded.
that the Duke is going into this fresh, whereas Snake is well and truly on his last legs. He's been in a couple of fights now. The time's running out. He's got the bum leg.
Yeah, and it's a real fitting and yeah, just great acting on display. Even Donald Pleasence here hamming it up seems to work. The Duke, who's been tormenting him since he's been in captivity,
Yeah.
he's just gleefully reveling in being the one to end the Duke.
You're a number one. I love
Yeah.
the punchback.
Yeah, or the Duke, or a number one.
Yeah, the Duke.
He made it.
Yeah, this. Yeah. See, I do love when there's like a hidden sort of plot line that's going throughout the film. Like you understand that Pliskin has gotten little bits of information here and there about how what aren't the bombs bullshit in this. Like I know the Plutoxin virus was fake.
Yeah, no, I believe this was real. Yeah, so they did neutralize them.
Yeah, but the
and
tape
even
was fake. Yeah,
well, he switches them out. He does the switcheroo as he gets there in the nick of time. And I love the just briefly before going up the winch. Like it's probably you think you're home and hosed, and then the thing stops while you're midway up it, and then it kicks into gear again. Thank God.
yeah. It's like getting the death machine, and then none of them rock up. They take extra long to start spawning in.
Yeah, it's
And
just
like they never take that long. If this was any other wave,
just a classic movie trope. Now you mentioned how the deaths of Snake's allies happens really quickly and they all get offed. This is a really good postscript to that. Why Snake does what he does. His conversation with the president here, and the way Donald Pleasence is playing it, and Snake just wants a minute of his time, and he puts that point you made to him. He says, "We did get you out, but a lot of people died in the process. What's your opinion on that?" And the way Donald Pleasence is playing this, he's barely listening to him. He's barely even looking at him. He's got this real callous kind of disregard for the people that helped get him out. So, which is, kind of calls back to my point I made. He's a bit of he's just a bit scummy in this, Donald Pleasence. I respect the fact he's been through a lot. He's been captured and tortured, and he's got a important press conference now to make. But by that same token, it doesn't take much to give a guy your full attention who saved your life. And the look on Hawk's lieutenant's face, he knows it as well. That
Yeah.
he's probably a guy who wasn't worth saving.
one thing I want to say, and I wonder if tying the scarf around the bum leg was a way to remember which one was actually injured. You see a lot of films where they get injured on one side, but through the film it shifts.
Yeah.
I'm glad that it's consistently the right leg that's out.
Yeah, I suspect you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that's why they probably put the scarf around it. I love that. He's just finished a smoke, so yeah, light another one up.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you still going to kill me, Snake? I'm too tired. Maybe later.
I mean, he has just spent 24 hours basically getting the shit kicked out of him. Air traffic control. Because it's basically a big helipad on the other side of that wall.
Yeah.
I know it was the satellite disc in the second one. The tape. What do they need to play it in again?
Yeah, so we talked about it a little bit earlier.
It's not really
some sort of
important,
piece.
but yeah.
Yeah, like in terms of the overall plot, it's not. But it was something about a peace summit, and there's some type of energy fusion that can help bring peace to, because I think someone mentioned earlier in the film America are at war,
Yeah.
and the president is on his way to a peace summit with this recording that can help bring about a lasting peace.
By the way, I love the fact that he just totally rips the spool out. I mean, this thing smells like piss, man. And you don't need a moment to explain what that is. He literally just pulls the tape, like the spool out of the tape, and throws it away. Oh well, you don't need him to say, "Oh yeah, well, good thing I took this" or anything like that. We already know what that means.
Yeah,
You know?
as Cabby's music plays. Yeah, what a great way to end it.
No, I really like these kind of movies that are like that. I suppose this is probably the thing that'll have the status of cult following or whatever if you decide to Google it. But no, I think it is possible for a film to come out and it does what it needs to do, and this is something I think that does that in spades.
I remember seeing this film as a kid, and I revisited it a lot as a kid, and was kind of amazed that they did make a sequel to it, because I do remember when Escape from LA came out thinking, wow.
You can't imagine there was a lot of fan demand for it. Like, if it was 15 years and the internet wasn't really a thing, and then all of a sudden a new Plissken movie, which is another thing that I kind of wonder is why they lightened it up a little bit in the second one, because you're basically reintroducing him. Like, it's not called Escape 2, it's literally just another Escape movie, and they just brought it out like it was any other one, because it doesn't reference anything in the first film at all. It's very much a standalone sequel.
It's quite impressive and amazing that we didn't see the last of Snake. So I really like both of them. They both complement each other really well. They're both very much of a piece with each other, and I just really feel a lot of echoes with the Terminator, another series I love.
Yeah,
they're so, the two movies, they're very much a piece, and they're so different, yet they're so much the same. It's really extraordinary, and same writer, same director, same main actor. Like, I see all these sort of parallels, and where one is just a lean, tight, standalone, solid sort of action thriller, and the other one is much more big and expansive and epic in scope, and they're doing some more interesting things with it. And I really enjoy both of them. They're so much of a piece, and he's such an amazing character, Snake, and Kurt Russell's signature role, and he's done so much good stuff, like we talked about at the start. It's hard to think of a bad movie he's been in, and if there is one, there's very little chance that he's bad in it. And even ones I didn't mention, like that Death Proof and 3,000 Miles to Graceland and other things like that. I really enjoy a lot of his movies. I don't think I can't name a bad Kurt Russell movie that I've seen.
Yeah, English 101.
English 101.
Yeah, I just love that. Like, this is ridiculous. He fucking speaks English. And they've got the lawyer translating the Chinese. He fucking speaks English.
I couldn't find a piano.
And believe me, the lessons do get harder. Nah, that was great. Another nice little 90-minute, again, the true magic of a Friday night film. I thought it was an excellent choice on your part. Absolutely.
I've had fun discussing it. Yeah, great flick.